Hey guys, I'm Chris Bach and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks. And this week, in case you couldn't tell from my voice, I currently have a raging cold, which if it hasn't seen me off by the time I get to Anaheim, hopefully will preclude me from getting the customary namthrax that everyone seems to come down with around that time, but we'll see how we get on. However, I was very keen not to miss this week's video, primarily for the fact that it deals with and addresses a couple of key points and a couple of questions which came about as a result of last week's video. Now, if you haven't seen that, I shall link above and below. But without further ado, let's delve right in. Now, last week's video, in case you hadn't seen it, addresses the fact that fuzz pedals, or fuzz face style circuits in general anyway, have this almost hidden, beautiful ability to act as a rather marvellous clean boost, by which I mean you dial in the amount of fuzz and the amount of volume you want within the pedal itself, and then use the volume control on your guitar. Primarily, we looked at Stratocasters last week, as they do work incredibly well with this little trick or hack, to dial back your level and, as I said, get a rather beautiful clean boost that is incredibly reminiscent of a lot of Stevie Ray's clean tone and a lot of Jimi Hendrix's clean tone. Those guys in particular were very big exponents of this little trick. Now, this is something that I guess had occurred to me over the years, but it's something that I'd not really put to any great use or any kind of great practical exponent of this. So I thought it would make for an interesting video just to see how I got on and see how well that really worked. Now, as I said, the video elicited a fairly big response in regards to people saying whether they'd been using this for years or whether it was a new idea to them, etc, etc. However, one thing that really came out of that video, people were very keen to get to the bottom of what my favourite fuzz pedal is. And I guess skirting around the fact that for the most part, pretty much 99% of what you hear on Friday Fretworks is very much digital. It's no secret that I'm a big fan of digital gear, Native Instruments guitar rig in particular being my kind of preferred choice for Friday Fretworks, as well as the Line 6 Helix. Now, I'm actually doing a good few demonstrations with the guys at Line 6 out at NAMM next week on not only the Line 6 booth, but the Yamaha booth as well. And as I said, I've been a big exponent of Native Instruments guitar rig and Logic in general. So in that respect, I guess the obvious question came out of it is, have you been listening to any digital fuzz effects in the past? Now I'm going to leave you with this clip to hopefully let you determine whether you're hearing the real thing or a digital emulation. So you've probably put two and two together by this point, and that is in fact a digital fuzz. Now, that one in particular I'm going to be using as a comparison for today's video. That is the Happy Fuzz. No secret why it's named that within Logic. Now, the fuzz pedal you heard at the start of this video is in fact the real thing. That is a Dallas Arbiter Dennis Cornell fuzz face from the late 90s. And the other digital fuzz effect then we're going to be comparing that to, as well as Native Instruments, or Logic I should say, is the ARBRITATOR fuzz. Again, no secret where it got its name, from the Line 6 Helix. Now, the first thing that I wanted to see is how they sound or how they compare when really at full bore. Now, we're going to get into their ability or their non-ability, we'll see, to clean up and act as that beautiful clean boost, as I referenced earlier, in a minute. But first and foremost, let's see how they compare when really maxed out and really driven to their max. Now, the first thing you're probably going to take away from those three clips is that the real thing, the Dennis Cornell fuzz face, sounds infinitely darker than the digital emulations. Now, please don't take this as any indictment on digital or analog. Fuzz pedals can vary greatly, and I guess it probably maybe would have made sense to use a slightly brighter sounding fuzz pedal. The Dallas Arbiter one is particularly woolly and particularly dark. However, for the fact that it is an actual fuzz face, and for the fact that we're comparing very much fuzz face style pedals within this video, I thought it would make sense. So, as I said, don't take that as any indication of fuzz pedals in general. I would give a big shout out at this point to the Helix, which I really like, the Arbitrator fuzz, especially for the fact that just for consistency's sake, we are running that without any amp blocks or without any cab blocks within the Helix. Again, running it directly into Native Instruments, just for consistency's sake and making it a fair comparison. Quite bright, but at the same time, kind of in control, I guess, and not really nasty or particularly harsh at any point, which I would say then is maybe a little bit of a pitfall of the Logic Happy Face fuzz, where you have to be very careful of dialing your amp back, the presence or the treble, to really make sure that it doesn't get particularly in your face or particularly harsh or bright. Now, let's compare the upshot of last week's video, which, as I said, is the fuzz face ability to really kind of clean up beautifully. Going to compare the analog, the real thing, with digital in the Helix and within the Logic. Now, to my ears, at least, this is where the whole thing starts to come apart a little bit, and you do get a very marked difference between the digital recreation and the real deal. I guess ultimately the fuzz pedal is kicking out a fair amount of level, even when the volume on the guitar is rolled back, and as such, that slightly hotter signal is going to help the amp, whether that's a real amp or a digital amp in this case, react in a little bit more of a natural way. When you're rolling the volume back on a digital recreation of that, whether it's the ARBRITATOR fuzz or whether it's the happy fuzz within Logic, you don't seem to get that same chime and that kind of characteristic sparkle of a fuzz pedal. So I would say, as much as the comparison is infinitely closer when using them to their kind of full bore capacity, I guess, you're not really getting that same chimey effect by rolling the volume back. But I guess if there is a take-home message from this, is that digital is getting very, very close. I guess ultimately it is still trying to recreate an analog signal, so make of that what you will. And also the fact that, as much as there was an analog input or an analog influence within that initial clip, still ultimately a digital signal because it's running into Native Instruments guitar rig. So take from that what you will. As ever, this has been Friday Fretworks, I should say. I'm Chris Buck. Thank you very much for watching. See you at NAMM if you are there. Failing that, I should be back next week for another video. Cheers, guys. Take care, and I'll see you soon.